Hi all. So it's been a bit since we have done any videos, and probably gonna do less this year for a few reasons. First of all, just time and everything else, and then obviously I've had some health stuff, and I'm also I'm not scaling back on reading necessarily, but I'll probably participate in some readathons and I might do some things, but I'm not sure. I don't want to make any promises in terms of TBRs or anything like that, just because I'm trying to just read, I guess, a little slower just to enjoy things a bit more. So,
What are you talking about?
what do you mean? I was explaining why we haven't appeared.
No one cares.
Okay, well, now Sir Chonk is here, so we can go. So I did my top 20 plus 10 honorable mentions, and Sir Chonk just did his top 10. So for a while, it's going to be me, and he'll just have some side commentary.
The same video? We're not going to do separate videos?
No, we're not doing separate videos.
Okay. We're not doing separate videos.
Why would we do separate videos? That wouldn't make any sense.
Your favorites than my favorites.
No, because it makes sense to just do best of together.
I'll just sit here for 2.5 hours.
Anyway.
Why are you talking about some books?
So I'm talking about some honorable mentions. So.
Oh, God.
All right, so my first honorable mentions are Beartown and The Housemaid. So Beartown is a story about hockey and rape in Sweden, and I really liked it. I think, I really did there's nothing I didn't like about this book. I found it compelling. I found the characters interesting. Like I said, it kind of reminded me of Friday Night Lights. I just think there's obviously there's a lot more focus on the hockey in the future books that I just don't need. But I liked it. I think Sir Chonk would really like this, actually.
I like hockey and I love bears.
Okay, there's no bears. The Housemaid, the only reason it made honorable mention, because I really loved this book at the end. It's terribly written, but I hated this book, for the first half. I honestly I was about to DNF it. I was I hate this book. This character's an idiot. Everybody's annoying in this book. And there was such a twist in the midway point that I was okay, lies. This book's amazing. So I don't think I like her writing, and I don't know that I necessarily need to read more. But I was pretty impressed by it. So that is in my honorable mentions. What Lies in the Woods was a pretty good thriller, some good characters, a lot about, teenage girls and some of the things they do to each other and, emotionally. So I liked it. Captain Underpants is also on my honorable mentions because it has no business being as funny and as good as it is, but it was fantastic. And so if you haven't read any of these Captain Underpants things, I highly recommend them, especially if you have a younger kid. Several people are typing, and Little Eve are on here. Several people are typing was just a really fun, weird sort of parody of office culture. And then Little Eve was a nice gothic story by Catriona Ward, and she writes amazing books. And then also on here we have Legends and Lattes, which was cute and a nice cozy fantasy. I kind of said it's if you take the parts, when you're playing a video game and an RPG and you go into the town, and you can nap at the inn and then you're upgrading your weapons and, you're just walking around. I feel this book is a story about what the NPCs are doing when you're not playing the video game. It was just cute. It was a small town, in a fantasy world. So I enjoyed it. And then I have Last Devil to Die. I actually read 3 and 4 this year. So I technically could both of them. And again, at this point, these books are no longer really mysteries. The mysteries are fine, but they're really about the characters. And so I truly enjoy them. But, again, we're on the 4th book and, they're pretty similar. So I can't really be one of the best books of the year. It's done the same thing 4 times. So, and then my last 2 honorable mentions are Sundial by Catriona Ward. I really like this one, and Survive the Night by Riley Sager. I read 2 Riley Sager in Middle of the Night, didn't even make my list this year. I just thought it was meh. But I did really like Survive the Night. All right, so my 20th book is Calla by Colin Walsh. This is a book about a group of kids in Ireland, and then it's like years later, like they're kind of coming back to the town, and there was some things happened when they were kids. Absolutely fantastic. I just really loved it. The writing is phenomenal. The character development was really phenomenal. I'm guessing some of the plot pieces were, like, to be honest, like, if I sit and, like, nitpick and think about it, the plot is kind of, like, a little over the top. But, like, that wasn't really what was as appealing. It was really just the way the characters interacted and their relationships that really I was very drawn to. In 19th, I have My Last Innocent Year, which is about a girl at college, and it's her last year of college, or I think it's her last year. It might actually be her freshman year, but she's in college, and she ends up in a relationship with one of her professors, and so it's kind of like, you know, her,
Scandalous.
yeah, like, essentially, but it's, like, not sexual assault, but also, like, definitely not okay. So the relationship's kind of complicated. I mean, I guess it is sexual assault. I don't know. It's complicated. And so, yeah, I enjoyed this. I mean, it's depressing as hell, but all right. And then in 18th, I have a book that I said objectively was probably one of, like, it was terribly written. And, like, the whole time I was like, this book is awful. It's so bad. And yet it made me so stupidly happy that it's Dungeons and Drama. And this is a book about, it's a high school book about a girl who is obsessed with musical theater and a boy who is a nerd gamer, like D&D kid. And she gets in trouble because her and her friends steal the car to go see a musical in the city or something. And her punishment is she has to go work at her dad's game shop. And of course, that guy she goes to school with works at the game shop, and they decide they're going to pretend to be in a relationship because his ex-girlfriend breaks up with him, and he's all upset, or no, he likes a girl, and her boyfriend breaks up with her, and then the guy who works there is trying to impress this girl who's one of the gamer girls. So they have this fake relationship, and of course they end up falling for one another. And I mean, it's so cheesy and so ridiculous and so cute. And, like, honestly, if this was, like, a movie, I would love it. And, like, I don't like romance except this kind. I love cheesy, like, teen, like, YA cutesy romance stuff. I loved it. All right. Then we have The Gunslinger, which is a surprising thing because, like, usually Stephen King doesn't make my list. But I really loved The Gunslinger. There are a few things, like, I didn't like. There's definitely a lot of talk of his balls. The women, again, I'm like, Stephen King, I know you've met women. Like, what's going on? Is Tabitha just actually a robot? Like, I don't understand. So, but yeah, so I started Trying of the Three and just wasn't into it. So, but I'm gonna, like, separately from all the Dark Tower stuff, I really liked The Gunslinger. It was like a Western, but, like, kind of like a fantasy at the same time. It's like a fantasy quest Western. Yeah, and I loved it. I just loved everything about it. I thought the story was great. 16 is Lolita. Which is obviously a classic. Everyone knows what Lolita's about, and I just really enjoyed it. Well, okay, I didn't enjoy it. It's depressing, but really well written, and I definitely think, like, obviously a lot of people react to Lolita just on the concept, and I thought I would hate it because obviously, you know, this guy is, like, dating a 12-year-old or whatever. But it's like really interesting. Like, the character obviously is interesting. He's awful. I mean, he's a terrible human being. But he's kind of funny in a weird way. I mean, kind of like a Patrick Bateman, where, like, he's appealing, but, like, he's also not a good person. Like, you're not supposed to like him as much as, like, he's fun to read, but you don't think he's a good person. And I mean, like, yeah, it's like, I get it. People find it offensive, but I mean, I don't think Nabokov was certainly supportive. I mean, the guy's obviously considered, you know, pretty awful human being. Like, it's pretty clear he's bad. 15, another classic was Slaughterhouse-Five. I was surprised at how much I liked this. Like, I don't know why. Like, I'm surprised because, like, I've read some short stories by Vonnegut, and like I think it's the kind of stuff I'd like. But man, this was great. It's weird as hell, but it was just so good. Like I was so into it. 14 is a graphic novel, or a trade paperback of Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, which is this comic book series. It's like set in this cute little pastel town of animals, but it's actually about like a vicious serial killer killing all the animals off. So it's really messed up and I love it. 13 was The September House. This is about like a woman who, so she lives in this haunted house, and it's really kind of funny, but like it's funny only in like her narration is kind of funny. But she lives in this haunted house and she doesn't want to tell anybody she's in this haunted house. And like, she's been there forever. And like every September the walls bleed and there's all these like ghosts that live there and they like cause all this ruckus. And, so everyone's like, why do you stay? And, you know, she just like excuses it away and stuff. And then as the story goes on, it goes from like kind of funny and weird to like really dark, and I wouldn't say it's creepy, but like it's definitely got horror elements. And then like there's obviously a metaphor here. You find out that like her marriage was very abusive, and you know, it's obviously a metaphor for domestic violence, and like a lot of the commentary, like why would you stay in this relationship? Why would you stay in this house? So really interesting and just extremely well written, and loved it. Loved everything about it. All right, so number 12 was Watership Down.
Only get 12?
Yes.
I find it complete.
Okay. Watership Down is a great quest story. It's like your typical hero's journey. This time, the only thing that makes it not typical is that it's about bunnies. What do you mean? Okay. All right. We may have to pause at some point because our dinner is coming, because we've been doing this all night. So it's a quest story. The characters are great. I mean, they are bunnies, but like you almost forget they're bunnies. I mean, minus the fact that they're clearly bunnies, but like they're well developed. Like they're not, you know, just like talking about like eating grass or anything.
Yeah, a little bit.
And yeah, they do actually. But and like there's like adventure, and like there's like one scene in particular that's like really creepy, and like just unsettling. And just, I loved it. I loved everything about it. Like, it's just so exceptionally well done. Yeah, I mean, it's easily a 5-star read. And if you like hero's journey, quest stories, you know, you'll like it. I mean, if you like Lord of the Rings, like I read Lord of the Rings this year and this, and I gotta tell you, yeah, I know Tolkien's good and everything, but like this is way better for like a quest story. So read this one, much better version. Okay, you may not agree with me on that, but
I agree. Watership Down's like my favorite book of all time.
No, I know I'm saying like the average person probably will not agree, but if you like Lord of the Rings, like you probably would like this. All right, so in 11th, I have another graphic novel. This is Batman the Killing Joke. Man, I had no idea how good this was going to be. I wanted to read it. I was like, you know, and I know there's like some controversy about it and stuff, and I just wanted to read it. I like Alan Moore, so I was like, well, I'm going to read it. And I usually what's weird is like I don't read the Batman comic series because like I don't know. I feel like there's a lot going on. I also don't necessarily think I like Batman in comic form because like, you know, one little slice of Batman is just like, eh. But I really like Batman stories. Like, I love the Batman movies. I've read, I think you gave me you gave me Arkham Asylum, the graphic novel. I really liked.
Gaslight, I think that one too.
Yeah, I read Gotham by Gaslight. That was good. So, and then Black Mirror, and then we read the other one too, Damned. So I really do like Batman stories, but my God, this was so good. And like, obviously the controversy, I think people are overreacting. Clearly, like it's nowhere near. And I'm very much the kind of person who would be upset if it was like super graphic rape scene for no reason. There's not even technically a rape. Like,
it's like casually implied.
It could be implied. It could also not be implied. Part of the thing is like how you read it has a lot to say about you, and like that's kind of the theme. And like, yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here. So anyway, so we're gonna move into our top 10, and Sir Chunk is gonna do his first number 10, his first one. So number 10 for him, he has.
I don't know.
It's Night.
Oh, Night. Yes, that's right. I'm talking now. So yeah, this is a pretty famous book. Elie Wiesel? Yeah, Wiesel.
I think, or
I think it's Wiesel. It looks like it's Wiesel, but I think it's supposed to be. Anyway, not important. Well, I guess it's a little important. But anyway, this is kind of like, I don't know. I don't want to say like prototypical, but like it's a true tale of this guy's experience as a Jewish person during the Holocaust, like taken by the Nazis, put on the train, trying to survive the camps, like everything that you've seen in a million movies, read a bunch of books. This is, I think, one of the sort of like original ones, and it's a true story, and not that the other ones aren't true stories, and it's like just sort of
I think it's one
really
of the first
hits
memoirs,
on a lot of like the main things that you would, I think, expect to be horrified by occur and are still horrifying. It's excellent.
Yeah, I should probably actually read this. I kind of want to read it. I just haven't.
If you read Mouse, it's obviously, there's less time avoiding getting caught and more time in the camps, but like the camp part in Mouse is kind of similar.
Yeah.
I mean, as you might expect. I'm sure their experiences were
very similar.
Horrible, but it's similar in some ways.
Yeah. All right, so my number 10 is The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. So this is an Agatha Christie mystery, and it's one of the Hercule Poirot ones. And everyone kept saying this is like one of the best. And I was like, so I was reading it, and I was into it, and I was like waiting for something. And at the end, I was like, and there were like all these points throughout the book that like Hercule Poirot would be like, well, I'll tell you later. And I was like, oh my God, I hate when they do that. Like, I hate like Sherlock Holmes is always like, oh, I know the answer. And then you like, he tells you later, but then you're like, well, if you had told us, he's like, oh, it's because there was an umbrella that was yellow. And you're like, but I didn't know the umbrella was yellow because no one told us at any point until like you brought it up later down the line. So I thought he was going to do that. He didn't totally do that. But there were times where he would be like, I'll tell you later. And I know. And we're like, okay, Hercule, like, can you just not? But like the way this story, like I can't stop thinking about how perfect it was. So that's why it's my number 10, because it's just really well done. Like at the end, I was like, of course it's well done. It's Agatha Christie. And yeah, I mean, it's not, and then there were none level good, but it's damn good. All right. So you had 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle next.
Yeah, I just talked about this in a previous video. I'm not going to say too much here, but it's also a cool mystery. Very interesting, like, plot device, character jumping into different characters, reliving the same day kind of thing. Clever, fun, good characters, really excellent story. Slightly tricky and like it leads you in directions you're not sure if you're supposed to go or not. And overall, really good.
We have a lot of mysteries in a row because we're going from Agatha Christie to 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle to Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, which is just such a fantastic mystery. Like it's one that I mostly figured it out, but it was also like so perfect that I was like not even upset. And like I had it figured out. I think the person is pulling up. We're going to come back. Hold on. We're back from dinner.
Or are we?
We are.
Maybe it's 6 months later.
Yeah, well, either way, we've had dinner. So,
6 months of dinners.
I was on Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, which is just a really fun mystery. It, like I said, I figured out what was going on, but it still kind of tricked me, and there were some like fun elements. It's very classic mystery, just really well put together mystery, like exceptionally done. And one of the things that was fun is I read it on Kindle, and there's points in the story where like the narrator is like, well, you know, I haven't solved it because if you look at your Kindle percentage left, and I guess like the audiobook version said, if you can tell if you're listening to that, and so like they updated the print, Kindle and audiobook so that they would all like address, which I think is just really smart too. But it's funny, but like, it's funny and like witty, but without being like not taking the mystery seriously. So I was like, it kind of has everything, because it's fun and entertaining, but then also the mystery is so good. So I was like, all right, this is great. So this is a really good book. I really liked that. That's why it's on number 9. All right, so number 8 for you is Presumed Innocent.
Yep. I feel like I've talked about this book a lot lately. So it's good. It's twisty. It's a courtroom drama, which I'm not really into. But if you can stand the out-of-date language and offensive language and sporadic occurrence of sex for no reason, it's quite a good story.
Yeah,
and twisty.
One of the best twists. All right. And number 8 for me is Piranesi. And on my top 20, I have 2 authors who have 2 books. And Susanna Clark is one of them. So number 8 is Piranesi. And this is like a book that, honestly, I have no idea how to describe this. And what's so funny about it is that, like, so I thought Piranesi was a faun. So, like, I was reading the book, and I would say it was like, I was almost halfway into the book, and I was like, wait, he's a guy. But I thought, like, the whole time it was about a faun in like a labyrinth. But it's just there's a faun statue. There is literally no way to describe this book. I don't think anyone can summarize what this book is about. Like, you just have to read it. It's fantastic. And it's funny because it was on, like, last year, it was on, like, everyone's favorite books of the year. And I was like, and then Sir Chunk had read it. He loved it. And I was like, okay, I feel like I'm going to end up being disappointed because I've just heard how good it was. And, like, no, it's one of those few books that, like, deserves, like, the hype it gets. And part of the reason it's getting the hype is just because it's so unique and interesting. And I think everyone really does love this book. It's not, like, it's one of those word of mouth, real kind of things. You liked it, right? You loved it a lot, yeah. All right, so number 7 for you is a Shakespeare play. It's Henry VI, Part 1.
Henry VI, Part 1. So I'm trying to read all Shakespeare plays, and I'm going alphabetically, so I'm now reading through just a ton of the histories, which are probably among his less exciting plays. But this one was really interesting. A lot of political intrigue, good characters. It's kind of like almost like a prequel before the War of the Roses, sort of, which I think is going to show up by Henry IV, the 6th, Part 3, I think. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's good. A lot of actual history with, obviously, bent around and stuff, but fun.
Wait, so if it's during the War of the Roses, is it like Game of Thrones?
Yeah, a little bit, I guess, except, less nicknames, and it gets to the point a lot faster.
It was finished? Well, maybe not.
Well, no, it's sort of like... It's weird. I think this is the only Shakespeare play I can think of. Well, there it kind of ends, not quite in medias res, but sort of, because like it's not. They finished the main arc, but there's a lot of other stuff going on.
Feels finished and isn't like.
No, I think it will.
And you're not like Winds of Winter Rain from
the other
Shakespeare.
Every other Shakespeare play, pretty clearly concludes. But again, the main arc concludes, but this one ends with like a guy like, I'm totally plotting, haha! Like this guy's plotting in like the last scene.
Was this like the first sequel in history?
I don't. Well, no, because Henry IV has Part 1 and 2.
Well, but that end?
That one clearly ends.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Is this the first like cliffhanger sequel?
Yeah, clearly he had intended to continue. Well, yeah, or he just like we know this guy historically does this. He could have been doing that, but it certainly felt like he was planning to write a sequel, which is interesting.
All right, so
anyway, it's good. It's not that funny. There's a few little comedy sequences as per usual, but it's the one thing it's really lacking to make it excellent is like some comedy.
Okay, so my number 7 is Remarkably Bright Creatures, which is a story of this older woman whose husband has died, and years ago her son went missing, and she works as a cleaner for a local aquarium, and she befriends, I guess befriends is kind of weird, but she essentially befriends this Pacific octopus, and he also narrates, and then there's other characters, and they all have their narration, and it's really just about like a bunch of people in this small town by the water, and obviously the snarky octopus character really makes the book, but like, where it's the kind of thing that you could kind of think like, oh, it's just going to be gimmicky because there's a snarky octopus character, but the whole book is really good, and so like, you don't have to have the snarky octopus, but it definitely adds value to the story, but it actually works. It's not like, haha, I'm gonna, I mean, obviously as a writer, you always need to try to come up with something creative, but like the story is just a really good, character study, but the octopus adds a lot to it. Our Squishmallow octopus is getting very excited. Mm-hmm. All right, so number 6 for you is the complete works of Poe.
Yeah, again, it's another one I've talked about quite a bit. This guy has got quite a range of writing styles. Obviously, the vast majority of the stuff he's famous for is the sort of creepy, atmospheric horror, which is awesome. And he does have a little more of that. Most of the stuff that's in there that fits that is the stuff that has become popular. But he's all kinds of other crazy stuff. He's got a ton of political satire, a ton of like satire involving like the media industry, like reviewers and stuff, and just insane stuff where people traveling in balloons for no reason, people turning into rubber. It's just completely insane. The guy is a lunatic. And his novel, which is unfinished, as I stated before, which just ends literally in the middle. He's like, I guess I'll just stop talking here. And I was like, what? Like, people are currently doing things, and it just stops. Like, he definitely did not finish it. He just wandered off one day and never went back to it. And also,
he
there's
probably
like
promised people for decades, like George R. R.
Right. Well, there's also like all kinds of stuff that doesn't make sense. Like at one point, he has this dog on a boat that like couldn't possibly be there, and then later on, he just ignores it, and like the dog doesn't ever show up again. It's like, what's going on? He did not try to like write any kind of like cohesive novel, or he did try, but no one helped him. It's a mess.
All right, my number 6 is Bunny by Mona, and I'm not 100% sure how to say her last name. I'm gonna say maybe like Awad. I don't know. But if I apologize for butchering her last name if I said it wrong. She is the other author who appears on here twice, and so Bunny was my number 6. Bunny. There is no way to describe this book either. So it's about a group of girls.
You're describing it.
Well,
you're describing it.
I'll give you the basic premise. So the basic premise is this woman is a grad student at Brown. And I don't know if it's officially Brown, but it's obviously Brown. And she's a literary scholar. And there's these girls that like are kind of like the Heathers. It's like the Heathers of college. And she ends up joining their sort of like salon, basically. And then it just starts to get weird and weirder and weirder. And like, eventually it ends up with like them turning bunnies into men and like manipulating them and but then they fail. It's like if you took Heathers and David Lynch and Frankenstein and put them together into a satirical horror and dark academia. So it's a lot of things I like, which is why it's number 6. And I mean, it was outstanding, but also like, I could very much see somebody going, this book is too weird for me. But I loved it. I absolutely loved it. All right, number 5 for you is Return to Howl Dayton.
Ah, yes, the triumphant return of the animal brethren to their vacation away from home. It's a kennel, basically. But this, I really like the 2 times they have gone to this place has both been kind of a locked room mystery kind of story, which is always fun. Of course, it's utterly ridiculous, but I like that it also provides an opportunity to just dump a whole bunch of other characters in, which are kind of like, not well developed, but quirky and fun. They're animals. What do you want? And yeah, it's just super fun.
It's one of the Bunnicula books.
Yeah, it's a Bunnicula book. If you like Bunnicula, this is one of the better ones, I think. The first one, of course, is the best one, and this might be creeping like the second best in the series.
All right, so my number 5 is also by Mona. Her last name.
Aw, D.
And this is 13 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl, and it's funny because this is actually her lowest rated book. And I think sometimes a lot of people don't like it because they're like, oh, the fat girl is sad in times and she thinks about her weight. And I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, like sometimes I get it. You want to try to be like hopeful and, but sometimes you should just be like authentic and honest. And so these were 13 vignettes about this girl from her like teen years into her adulthood and like her struggle with her weight. At one point she's fat. At one point she's losing weight, then she's gained weight, then she loses weight, and it's also her relationship with her mom and her mom's obsession with her weight. And And, you know, I had a lot of personal, like, experiences that were very similar to this character's, and so there was a lot of that. But there was one chapter in particular that might be the best thing I've ever read in my life. Like, I was just like, this is the most authentic thing I've ever read. And I just absolutely loved it. There were, I would say there's vignettes out of the 13, like, chapters or stories, kind of, that I was, like, less into, but none of them were bad. And then there were some that were just so good that, like I said, probably some of the best things I've ever read. So I really, really love this. But like I said, I also read Rouge by her this year, and I got All's Well for Christmas. So I will pretty much be reading all of her stuff. And that's my goal because she's fantastic. So your number 4 was Dune.
Yes. Dune. Sci-fi and sand. What else do you need? Took me forever to get to this book. I was like had on my to-read list for like, I don't know, a couple of decades. And yeah, it's actually a much breezier read than I expected. I thought it was going to be really dense and like ponderous and annoying.
Because the movies are like 27 hours long and there's 3 parts.
Yeah, the David Lynch movie is utter nonsense. And I expected when I read this book to be like, oh, it's going to be full of craziness. But no, none of the weird stuff is even in it. David Lynch just made it up and stuck it in there because he's a lunatic.
I love David Lynch.
And then the new movie is just like, what if we make a movie that's 10 times longer than it needs to be? Oh, yes, let's do that. And so I was like, oh, it's going to drag. But no, the book is really well paced and moves along and does not need to be 3 different movies. That's idiotic.
All right. My number 4, and this is the second Susanna Clarke, so this is my second author that I have twice, is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which is one of the books that Sir Chunk gave me and was my favorite. And it's just so good. So it's a very long story over the course of many years about this young magician and this old magician, not exorcists, magicians, or priests and not priests. And, I mean, it goes through, like, is it the Napoleonic Wars? Yeah, right?
I believe
it's like
so.
Waterloo and whatever's in Spain, or...
Don't start singing ABBA in here.
I won't. So there's some, like, war stuff, there's some political stuff, and then there's all the, like, fantasy elements as well. It's absolutely hilarious. I like Mr. Norrell. I think he's supposed to be unlikable, and he's like my favorite person of all time. Like, I'm like, oh, look, it's me. If I was like a British gentleman in the Victorian era, look, he's so much like me. But it's funny. It's like the world building is fantastic. Like, I couldn't stop thinking about this book. Like, the entire time I was reading it, and then after I was reading it, I randomly, recently, was just thinking about it. Like, I think about it all the time. It's that good. It's so amazing. I cannot wait to read more of her stuff. Like, obviously, I read 2 of the books that were out last year. And then 2 more came out in October that I bought for Sir Chunk for Christmas, so I will be reading those at some point. But those are just, like, some short stories and, like, a little fairy tale. So, come on, Susanna, write something else.
Yeah, write something else.
All right, speaking of writing something else, it's R's for Rocket by Ray Bradbury.
He's not going to be writing anything else.
Yeah, but luckily you still have plenty to read of his.
Yeah. Yeah, tragically, the year he died, I was teaching, and I frequently, that's always tragic, and I frequently said, kids would always ask me, is he dead yet? Because most people we read are dead, and I was like, no, and hopefully he writes a whole bunch of stuff before he dies, because he's kind of old, and then he, like, died, and I was like, no, it's my fault. But anyway, so R's for Rocket is an older collection, but it's got, like, so many, like, the absolute best stories are in here. It would have been number 1 on the list. The only reason it's not is because I previously read almost this entire collection before, so it feels kind of cheating. But there are a few in here I hadn't read, but it's got, like, you know, the Velt's in here, Kaleidoscope is in here, that one where it rains. I forget what that one's called.
There Will Come Soft Rains? That one?
No,
or the one in Venus that's, like,
on
always
Venus,
raining? Yeah.
The one with the sad dinosaur, sea serpent guy. Yeah, it's just loaded with awesome, awesome stories. It's so good. It's maybe the best Bradbury collection I've read.
Yeah, I didn't do any rereads, so, like, I love To Kill a Mockingbird, but I'd read it before, so I didn't put that on there, and then
this wasn't a complete reread.
I know.
There were, like, maybe, like, a third, maybe a little less, that I hadn't read before. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Well, that's why, I read The Shining again, but, like, again, some of those are my favorite books, but I tried not to, and so, like, yeah, it makes sense. You know, you're like, okay, well, it's partially stuff I read, so I'm not going to add it. So my number 3 was Rebecca, and the thing with this book is it's not like unheard of. You know, everyone loves this book. Everyone talks about how good it is. But I had heard about the movie. I've never seen the movie. Sir Tom had seen the movie and said it was boring.
It was boring.
And I don't know. I just was kind of like, my parents had told, and my mom had told me about it. My mom had seen the movie, and you know, and so I was like, I'm gonna read this book. You know, I don't know. I just wanted to read it, and like, I don't even know what it is about this book that is this good, but the writing is phenomenal, and like the mood, like the whole time you can like. It just feels oppressive in a weird way. Like you're reading it and you just feel like almost like uncomfortable, but you can't figure out why. And it's just amazing. And like the plot is okay. And it's not even necessarily that the plot is that good, but it was unbelievable. Like it's funny because a couple of people I know who've also read it, like kind of had like the same reaction. Like I can't express what it is about this book, but it's that good. Like it's just so good. And if you haven't read it and you like gothic literature, or you like, you know, just kind of moody sort of mysteries, just moody type things, like you would really like it. It's fantastic. I absolutely loved it. All right, you're number 2.
All right, so this is a pretty cool book, HMS Ulysses, which means Ham Montgomery Smith. That's not what it means. It's just
Her
a
Majesty's
boat.
service,
It's just a
or
boat.
His Majesty's ship.
So
ship,
this is written by a dude, Alistair MacLean, who was a naval officer during World War II, and so he's writing about naval warfare in World War II, and it seems, I mean, I wasn't a naval officer in World War II, but it seems pretty darn authentic, and one would think it would be what with him having actual experience at it. There's a lot of characters and a tremendous amount of information about how battleships work, which you're kind of like, what is this, Moby Dick here? You know, it's got all that kind of like, but
is there a lot about whale skulls?
No, it's kind of necessary because they then later on they reference things quickly, and like you kind of need to know what they are, so it makes sense, but just. The book's flaw is that there's not a ton of character development because there's too many characters and like too much going on. But that's kind of good because there's so many just incredibly horrific, agonizing character deaths that if there was better character development, it'd be like unbearable. It's so good. And I don't know. I was kind of like meh on it for the first half, and then it just really picks up. It's about like, you know, the World War II convoys where the warships escort like the supply ships over like the Black Pit, the Atlantic Ocean and stuff. Super good, really excellent. And this guy supposedly is amazing. I read a previous boat book that was kind of fun but kind of goofy. And
he's on to boats lately.
And then a bunch of things I read on the interwebs were like, no, this is the one you got to read. This one's way better.
Boats and
pirates. I was like, okay, internet, let's see. And I was like, yes, internet, you are correct this time. So maybe I'll try to hunt something else down by this guy because it was really good.
Or some other internet
this is
books.
A very rare 5-star. I give almost nothing 5 stars.
Don't you have like a bunch of Clive Cussler books?
Yeah, but I don't know if he's good or not.
Well, I think people like him for ship stuff.
You're ship stuff.
Okay, my number 2 is a book that many of you have already read and you know of, and so I'm not exactly telling anyone anything new by saying this is good, but it's The Secret History, which is considered, you know, one of the best books of all time and all that, you know, and she won the Pulitzer and stuff. So like,
a tart.
Not for this but why, I don't know. I haven't read her other stuff yet though. So I kind of like was trying to describe this to Sir Chong, and I was like, you know, the thing is, it's like, so the interesting thing is she went to college with Bret Easton Ellis, and they were both like writers together, and like I think they're friendly, or they used to be friendly. I don't know if they still are. And there's obviously, you can kind of see that they had like very similar writing style. They probably learned, you know, had similar classes. But I was like, this is kind of like if Bret Easton Ellis wrote a book and wasn't like full of himself and could just get out of his own way. Because it's about these so it's about this group of kids in this college, and it opens with them talking about how they murdered somebody. And then it's just them talking about what led up to this murder and then how they deal with this murder. And they're horrible people. They're just a bunch of rich people who are like bored. I don't even know. There's not really a reason for any of their actions. And they're awful, but it's so good. Like, it's actually... The one thing I think that I didn't expect about this book is it's incredibly funny. Like, I thought it was, it was, like, going to be a sort of a thriller. It's not really a thriller. It's just kind of a little more character-based. But it's so funny. Like, dark funny, though. Like, so don't be, like, thinking you're going to get, like, some... Will Ferrell story or something, but like very darkly funny. And like I found myself actually laughing out loud during this, and I was like, I did not anticipate this to be so funny. So I absolutely loved it. Obviously most of you know about this book, but if you haven't heard of it for some reason, go read it. And you're number one.
Yeah, this is not uncovering a hidden gem as usual here. It's called The Wild, a book that I thought I had read a long time ago, and then I picked it up to just peek at it because I was bored, and I was like, I don't think I actually read this book. So I read the whole thing. Oh, not again. I read the whole thing, realized I had not read it previously, and it's, of course, excellent. Again, what do you expect? Just really excellent characterization of characters that don't speak. You know what I mean? Like, most of the characters are dogs. There's some people, and the people are sometimes they're nice, but a lot of them are douchebags. And it's just a great story about like a terrible sort of region and what you're gonna do to survive there, and the Yukon, general nature of how animals work and stuff. And it's sad but very good. What?
The Yukon.
Yeah, the Yukon.
Yeah. Okay. Do you know what my number one is?
Badlands of Hark.
It's If We Were Villains.
It should be Badlands of Hark.
It's not Badlands of Hark, which I have read, but not this year, and also it wouldn't be on my top 30.
It won 17 Pulitzer Prizes.
Anyway, yes, it did. All right.
It won the Fields Medal.
R.L. Stine has probably won, like, no medals, except maybe, like, you're good at writing kids' books.
Fields Medals for math.
I don't know what it's for.
That's the joke.
I thought it was for, like...
It wouldn't have won.
Science, but... all right. Anyway, so my number one book this year, which I did a whole video comparing Secret History and If We Were Villains, because they're very similar. They're both about, like, a group of unlikable people in college. So where Secret History is about a group of students in this very, like, elite classics. And, like, basically it's, like, exclusive, where only certain kids are, like, accepted in. It's just, but they study the classics, and so they go around speaking in ancient Greek a lot of the time, and can be a little pretentious, but it works. In If We Were Villains, they're at an arts sort of school, and so this is an exclusive group of Shakespeare scholars and actors. So I mean, that alone was going to make me like this just slightly more, because I'm not a classics student, but I was a literature student, and I love Shakespeare. So, and I love theater. And on top of it, this one actually has a little bit of a mystery element as well. So I did like that, and the ending was just blew me away. I know a lot of people don't like it because they feel like it's like, they say it's like the crappy Secret History. Obviously, I liked it more. I mean, they're like pretty much both up there. But a lot of dark academia now is like leans towards like dark academia, but in like the fantasy world. So like there's like certain fantasy elements. Like these are just academia with like crappy people committing murders and crimes and stuff. So, so they're both full of people who are unlikable. But again, I think the edge goes to this one for me because there is the mystery and then the Shakespeare piece. Also with this one, like I could not stop thinking about this book. Like while I was reading it, like when I wasn't reading it, I was like working and stuff. I just could not get these characters out of my head. And then like whenever I'd try to read something after, it took me a while to like not just be missing this story. Like I couldn't wait to go back to like read it, and I wish I was like, oh, I want to read it again. So I probably will reread it sometime this year because I really loved it that much. But the one thing about it, I'm kind of afraid to reread it because I feel like in a very different mood, I could have hated this book because it is a little pretentious that they walk around quoting Shakespeare all the time and stuff. And like, I don't know, like I could see people being like, these characters are so annoying, and like they are, but they're like the right kind of annoying for me. So I ended up loving this book. So those were our favorite books of the year. Have you read any of these? Do you hate them all? we don't want to hear about that, because generally if I like a book, I find a lot of people hate it. Or I don't like books people love.
I don't like hardly anything. So,
Yeah, it was hard for him to come up with 10 books.
Yeah. She's like, do you want to do honorable mentions? I'm like, no, I can barely get to 10 books I like.
So, but, the exciting thing is, in our top books, I had one from his list and he had 2 from mine. So we did a swap, and as much as we complained that, we didn't love books, and I had a couple of his that could have been, definitely, like, if I had put To Kill a Mockingbird on again, Sometimes You See It Coming could have made my honorable mention. So, it was right on the edge. So, and I think you had Thursday Murder Club was right on the edge for you too. So,
I guess.
Yeah, so it gives us both like 3 out of each other. So even if we were complaining, we did pretty good.
Yeah, but I think like 6 or 7 yours that I read are probably like the 6 or 7 worst books I read last year. But that's okay. Let's keep things positive.
Well,
just like Anne of Green
Gables
would eat grass and make gables and stay positive, we should do the same thing. Let's make gables, eat some grass, write on a slate.
I still think
make out with a guy named Bly.
They're not books you chose, so obviously you're going to like them less than books you chose.
Well, yeah, because I want to read the ones I choose.
Right. That's just natural, like...
Also, you have terrible taste. Anyway, so this is pretty exciting. Books and stuff.
All
Books
right.
are for nerds. Oh, wait.
We'll hopefully be back with some more stuff this year. Hopefully. But, again, we're not making any promises in terms of, like, frequency.
Our next video will be A Story for Christmas 2029.
Bye.
Boop.